Hello and welcome to Troopers on Deck. My name is Rebic and I am alongside my co-host Dark.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
So we are starting a podcast about Swigo. We came up with this idea to help reach out to all aspects of the community. We both have been playing for a long time. We're very passionate about the game, and there's just so much to talk about and so much that is not talked about. And we just want it out there and just give our experience of the game and have your experiences as well heard in the community. Anything you want to add, Dark?
Yeah, how about before we really get delved into the topics, why don't you tell everybody like when you joined the game and kind of just how you've kind of seen the game evolve throughout your time playing the game, like when you started and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yes, of course. So I started the game in 2017, which the game is much different back then. A lot of different characters. You're mixing a lot of factions up, and I was attached instantly. But the farming of the characters really killed my excitement and all of that. And when I started just losing nonstop, I put down the game for 2 years, and then I came back in 2019, late 2018, and I have been here since. And the game has just changed so much since then. Characters are double shard farmable now. Ships are not, sadly. And it seems as if now the game is more faction tied and faction based.
Hmm.
Uh, do you want to touch on yourself, Dart?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I started playing this game right around late 2016, sort of around the time when it came out. I think it'd been out for a year at that point. And where the game's at now was drastically different from where it was back in 2016, where you just had like I remember the first meta that I was really chasing on was the Wigs meta. All of you old Eastwigo players out there know the Wigs meta. That was about the time I joined in. So it was definitely interesting to see how the game has evolved, definitely from not so faction based to now it's heavily faction based, like you were saying. Um, Rebic. Yeah, so it's very interesting to see. But yeah, I've been around since early 2016 and I'm completely free to play. I don't play the game as hard as like some of these other content creators do. I'm very relaxed, chill about it. I actually have a life outside of Swigo, unlike most of these people that you kind of see online or whatever. So I don't devote too much time to Swigo. So I feel like that perspective can kind of shed some light on people who also don't play so much of Swigo on their daily routine.
Yeah, and on my end, I play Swigo every day. I actually wake up in my time zone at 5 a.m. just to get the shipment refresh. So I can make sure that I get all the resources and currency and shards that are available during that time to make sure I don't miss any shipments whatsoever. So I'll even stay up later than I want to. So I'm very competitive when it comes to Swigo, and I'm in Kyber 3. I am, well, they call like a mini fish, a goldfish in the spending. I get light speed bundles. That's basically it. But yeah, as Dark said, he's 100% free to play. He is casual. He has a lot going on in his life. I have a lot going on in my life too, but this game just has a grip on me like no other game has had before. And I'm very, very competitive and focused and driven, except on mods, which you will see later in the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I guess now that introductions are out of the way, why don't we start getting jumped in on some of the recent stuff that's kind of been happening in the game? Um,
Mm.
how about starting with Jar Jar? Jar Jar has been out for a little bit over a week now. So, Rebic, what are your thoughts on Jar Jar's impact on the game, especially in Grand Arena?
Yeah, so Jar Jar is quite an interesting character, Dark. Jar Jar is a defense heavy focused team. that is something we have really been lacking in the past year, really. The last team that has really caused this much complication was, if you remember, Malgus. Malgus was a tyrant when he first came out on D, but eventually Jedi Knight Cal came out, and, well, it just basically sent Malgus off of defense. And it's quite ironic. Malgus is now one of the few semi-consistent counters to Jar Jar. So a buddy of ours and a streamer we watch, Arnold, did some data on Jar Jar after the first round of GAC with Jar Jar on defense, and most of the counters do not work. Bane does, Malgus does at times, and even GLs are failing. But if you're going to use Bane on Jar Jar, that means that's one less GL counter. So it's quite interesting to see that, because I know it was heavy protection based and it had defense stuff in his kit, but CG did also say that Leia was an offensive GL, but we saw how that was on the first few months in GAC. So it's an interesting character for sure. It brings new mechanics to the game. It brings more possibilities for kits down the road for sure. So what do you think, Dart?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I like the correlation between how Malgus and Jar Jar. I feel like Jar Jar is going to be pretty dominant on our GAC defenses in a while. I personally have not seen any Jar Jars yet. I mean, I'm only in Kyber 2, so I don't expect to see any Jar Jars for a few months. But I think he's going to reign supreme here on defense, especially with his Datacron. I do expect eventually something to come out that will probably totally just knock out the shield generator, because that's really what keeps the team alive, is that shield generator. Well, and Jar Jar's, I guess, death mark, if you want to call it, kind of keeping it off that shield generator, that whole convoluted kit or whatever. But I do expect something to come around here, not very soon, but in the future, like with what happened with Malgus. Malgus had his time to shine. Jar Jar will have his time to shine. So yeah, something along those lines will come along. But I do like the team. It's a very cute team, especially with the ties in with Jar Jar's kit. I like the death mark. I really appreciate the 1,000% evasion. That's kind of funny. I like that. Yeah, it's a fun character. Again, I only wish that there just wasn't so much reading. Kits these days have gotten a little bit out of hand when it comes to the paragraphs. I'm sure, as most people in the community know, you need a degree in Swiggoology to play this game effectively. But yeah, I also do like in the kit here how there's like conditions for like certain insta kills or whatever. If they're separatists, that increases the chance to an insta kill. I think that's kind of cool. The one of the 3 effects right here is mentioned in the basic. That's kind of cool. But other than that, yeah, pretty cool things on my opinion, over here about Jar Jar.
Yeah, the last thing I'll add, Dark, is the call-outs to separatists in the Gungan faction is quite interesting, because the only call-out we really have for that is General Grievous and Trench, which Trench on the bench is the common saying in this community. So it's really interesting, because I believe they did that because imagine the target lot and the turn mirror train you could have ran with the constant AoEs from B1. It would have just blown through that shield generator. And I think that is the reason why they did that. So you couldn't use General Grievous to counter this team. And I think that's why they have those separatist callouts, because there's no other real reason to do so. Because if they're going to release something later, why would they release something that the Gungans would directly counter? So I think that call out is specifically for General Grievous, in my personal opinion. But after being done touching up on Jar Jar, let's breeze by Padawan Obi-Wan.
Yeah, our newest marquee character here.
I'm going to let you take the lead on this, Dark. What are your thoughts on Padawan Obi-Wan, how he was released, and that interesting reward in the marquee event?
Oh yes, I'm sure that's got everybody's attention right now. The exclusive level 9 Padawan Obi-Wan Datacron has got everybody's attention up in ears, and it's the only way you can get is through the marquee event having a 7-star Padawan Obi-Wan. Not a big fan of that whatsoever. That's really unfortunate. The Datacron's busted, from what I can tell. But it's really unfortunate that you have to spend at least $300 to get this Datacron for however long the event lasted. I think it's gone now, if I remember. Like the event's just gone. So y'all missed out on that opportunity. I'm sorry for you, but then again, I'm not sorry for you because you didn't have to spend $300 on a mobile game. But one thing positive about Padawan Obi-Wan and the kit and how he was released is the kit is very simplistic, other than the Omicron. I liked how the basic is. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing much to it. Now I know in some sort of testing, it wasn't great or whatever, unless you have the Datacron. And I'm sure this Omicron here, I think it's on the unique. This is too bad. Also, this Conquest Omicron, this is a shame because I don't know anybody who uses any of the other Conquest Omicrons, which I believe the only other Conquest Omicron is the 50 RT. That is too bad. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but just a precursor here, this is bad. I do not like this here at all for a number of few reasons here. But other than that, I like the simplicity of the kit. I think he's going to have a lot of good tie-ins here with Padme, or Quad May, I guess is the term here now being used. So I'll be excited to see how he interacts with Master Qui-Gon, Padme, and all that stuff. So I'm kind of excited. What are your thoughts on that, Rebek?
Yeah, Dark. I think those are all very good points. The kit is not overly complex. An example of a complex kit that I love to point out is Boba Fett, Scion of Django. A lot of people have forgotten that character. People think Trench is the worst character from Conquest, but my vote goes to Boba Fett, Scion of Django, because when was the last time we heard? As you see, Dark has him at Gear 1, Relic 1. No, Gear 1, Level 1.
Yeah.
And the kit is just so text heavy, so many conditions, so many things like stacks and all of that. It's not being used at all. There's no incentive or reason to get Boba Fett signed to Django. So I like how Padawan Obi-Wan's kit is simplistic, but at the same time, I believe his release should have been so much more different. And when you reboot your game, Dark, I want you to go to your Datacrons, actually, because if you guys will see in a short moment, Dark actually already has a level 9 Datacron and 2 level 6s. Mm-hmm. And I think CG is realizing that people that are a majority in the community have a decent sized roster now. And with those decent sized rosters, we're able to farm those Datacrons more frequently and free to play, which they do not like. So giving to him that level 9 exclusive is saying, hey, you have big counts. That's great. Farm the new season of Datacrons, but you're not getting this one. And that is my concern. Because if someone's going to see the initial impressions when Quad May and Master Qui-Gon, who is expected to come out this coming week, they're going to be like, oh, wow, he's great. But we don't know how much of that viability is going to be tied behind that Datacron. So you're not going to have that same character. So if you don't get that character 7 stars right away, to bump those relics up right away, by the time you get him free to play, you're not going to have that same viability and enjoy that, could I say, meta time that he's going to be having when he first comes out, which I find quite interesting. And yet upsetting. But I understand why to treat the whales and all of that and everything. The last thing I want to touch on is what are your thoughts on all these teams that we're seeing with Quadmade coming out and then the Raid, Dark?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We know the Raid is Naboo based for sure. I believe that was confirmed in one of the road aheads. Definitely building up a lot of Galactic Republic separatist oriented themes here. That's probably going to be allowed to be used in the Raid. I can almost guarantee that the Quad May team will probably have some sort of specialized mechanic exclusive to the Raid to allow for such and such team to be viable there. I can also probably assume Master Qui-Gon will probably have a Raid Omicron. Just like Bausch Leia had her Raid Omicron for the Krayt Dragon Raid, Scout Trooper had his Omicron for the Endor Raid. I can probably assume either Master Qui-Gon or one of those other separatist Galactic Republic characters will get a Raid Omicron here to use in the future upcoming raid. I don't know how much we know too much about the structure of the raid. If it's going to be anything like Conquest, like that boss Sector 3 node, I'm not looking forward to that. That is mindless and unfortunate. But, we'll see how it goes. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the raid? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so they have a massive opportunity with this raid. They can touch on nostalgia of what I believe is a large part of their fan base and their player base, which is the prequel. So they could do an amazing job and blow our minds away, do a new mechanic that doesn't give us like dizziness or motion sickness, unlike the speeder bike raid.
Yeah.
Or they could just be lazy and do the B1 thing, or do like how they did and just do a copy and paste from the Jar Jar event with the constant B1s. So they have a lot of opportunities here. And I understand with the characters that there will be strong viability to the new characters. All I'm asking is they let us use the characters we already have, because we know they're going to allow us to use Gungans, Separatists, and Galactic Republic. So we have a lot of Galactic Republic characters already relicked up and all of that. Let us use them, please. The one example I would like to point out is in the Endor speeder bike pursuit raid, Vader and Palpatine were not allowed to be used. They said it was because of the cape and cloak mechanic, yet Leia had a poncho on, and I know Pablo has a little poncho on as well. So I think it was just because too many people had them already at high relics, and that's my issue. And so I'll end it with this. If this raid wants people to enjoy it, do not hide the viability behind that, and make it so that we can use the characters we want to. And if we choose to get these other characters, let us know and see that they're good outside the raid. Be okay. We want these characters. Let us feel like we want to do that. And that's my big thing, because I have no reason to really get a really high score in the raid, because when was the last time we had a raid character? Didn't have one for the Krayt Dragon. Didn't have one for the speeder bike. Like, the only thing we're getting is currency. So there's no reason to do amazing in the raid besides getting that currency, which I am doing just fine with what our guild is doing. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
But next, we are going to do our weekly/monthly rants. So every podcast we will have a rant. And this rant is going to be about none other than Omicrons. Just as Dark touched up on earlier in the podcast, Omicrons, my oh my, how the mighty have fallen. And
Yeah.
I'll open up this one and I'll pass it over to you, Dark. Omicrons used to be something we were thrilled about, excited about. Oh my, Treya got an Omicron. Wait, Savage got an Omicron. Characters that we maybe didn't have at high relics, and their viability was boosted up, and we were incentivized. We're like, okay, this character is really good in this game mode. Grand Arena, Territory Wars, even. TB's, the Cal Omicron is interesting. I will give you that. But the Omicrons used to be on characters that we enjoyed, already had, and just boost them. It was a mini rework.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, it seems as if Omicrons are just for new characters, which is what I have a problem with. If they are going to keep the Omicrons tied to new characters, then just give us reworks on those older characters. Like, there are characters that, since we have been playing for so long, Dark and I, we just don't have any reason to gear them up. And will they make as much money? No. But throw the free-to-play players a bone. Give the characters that we are passionate about, that we want to gear up, give us a reason. Give us that last reason to push them up to relics, push them up to gear 12, to get those Chirotechs on them, to get to gear 13. Just do that for us, because this Padawan Obi-Wan Omicron is just abysmal. It is. I can do all those feats without that Omicron, with all the teams that I have, because I built up my roster. And this is just, is it going to make it easier? Yes, it will make it so much easier. I have no doubt. But what is the point of this? And then we have a Galactic Challenge Omicron. That is the one thing that sparked the idea of this podcast. That was my last straw. I contacted Dark, and I'm like, we need to start something so we can start talking to the community. Because a Galactic Challenge Omicron, my worry is, are they going to start getting stuff behind Galactic Challenges with this Omicron? Because we know they said there's going to be an emphasis on Gungans, like there is with every new faction. But is there going to be stuff tied behind, like feats tied behind it, where you can't get Red Crate unless you have that Omicron? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'll let you take it from here, Dark. I'm concerned.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Yeah. A lot of this doesn't scream too much that you probably need the Omicron to get the max crate here. This just looks like probably a luxury Omicron. Again, I think it's still, I agree, ridiculous that we're putting Omicrons for Galactic Challenges. I don't know anybody who really actually tries these and puts in more than 30 minutes of work into any of these. I mean, it's more than just an absurd waste of time. Let the people on YouTube figure that out for you. I'm not going to apply an Omicron. I don't have the time to sit and meander with these. Like the Galactic Challenge today, I think, was a droid one, and I did the final, or the whatever it is, the last tier of the challenge. My droids got smoked a few times. I'm like, all right, I'm done. No, I'm not going to push it. I'll get my crate 9 and leave, whatever. Because you're only missing out on a few mod pieces, and you can get those in other game modes or whatever. So it's not like it's huge to get Red Crate here. So this looks to me more like a luxury Omicron. But I'm going to go back to Padawan Obi-Wan, because here's where more of my Omicron concern is if we add more Conquest Omicrons to characters like this, is this going to increase the difficulty of Conquest? Because they might just start putting feats into there saying that, like, win 10 battles with Padawan Obi-Wan with his Omicron applied. I mean, that's a ridiculous example, but they could throw like something in one of these things here. Like it'd be like inflict accuracy down, for example, like 50 times. And I don't know all the characters that inflict accuracy down, but I know Padawan Obi-Wan does with his Omicron. So that's my kind of concern here is if they're going to buff the feats in Conquest, make it more difficult, because like you said, Rebic, more and more free-to-play players are getting more and more of those Datacrons, the level 9 Datacrons, easier. So they might want to make Conquest a little bit harder. And I'm okay. I'm actually I would be okay if they did that, but just then make the rewards a little bit better too, because the end of the 2 week conquest rewards, other than the shards for the exclusive character, are absolutely no good. That those need to change in my opinion. For 2 weeks of work, the rewards are truly not great at all. But so that's really my problem with the Omicrons here, specifically the Conquest Omicrons and Galactic Challenge Omicrons. Not This is not good or healthy for the game, and this Conquest one specifically could have very bad implications in the future. And I really hope they don't go down that route.
I have an interesting stat for you, actually. Something you and I did not talk about, Dark. As of today, there are 621 Omicrons applied to the Gungan phalanx for galactic challenges.
Wow.
And for Padawan Obi-Wan, there are 3,117 Omicrons applied.
Really? See, that shocks me.
Yes.
That actually shocks me.
Yes. And Shorty has 9,027. Now, I want you all to keep that in mind when I go to a Grand Arena one. For a Grand Arena, I'll do a more recent character even. Dark Trooper Moff Gideon has 4,284. That's already 1,000 more. When Traya, well, Boss Nass one, that was Territory Wars. But for Grand Arena, Wampa has 258,723 Omicrons applied.
Yep.
So it just seems like Grand Arena Omicrons, if you want us to appreciate Omicrons, give it to us where we want them. And I love how you touched on, if they're doing this Omicron to make the conquest more complicated, I am going to be furious, because that is not what Omicron should be. It shouldn't be so, okay, we're going to ramp up the difficulty of a game mode, but here's this thing that we're going to give you to make it easier that you need to have in order to make it so that it was like how it was before.
Yeah.
That is the issue I have. I really am hoping they don't keep this up. It shocks me how many people have already applied the Conquest Omicron. It's sad because it's out of fear, and that's what I'm going to go with. It's out of fear that you're going to need that. And that 600, I'm respectfully, the 621 people that applied the Galactic Challenge Omicron, you're a better person than me, or you're a bot. I don't know which one it is. I don't. Because there should be no one in their right mind that should want to apply the Omicron to a Galactic Challenge character.
I mean, unless you're like 100% completionist in this game, you're the max whale, or you're doing it for the memes because you think it's funny and somebody's going to look at it at your roster and see that and they're like, oh, aha, look at this guy. Okay, you got me or whatever. But if you applied it to be serious, I would rethink your Omicron priorities. I really would.
Yeah, so I'll wrap this up by asking, what Omicron should they focus on in the game if they want players to get more excited again? And then the second part is, what's a character you think needs an Omicron?
So that's a great question. I'll tell you this right now. I love when they put Omicrons on old characters, because there are so many big name characters in this game that are absolutely no good, and they definitely need some love in the future here. Oops, excuse me. Sorry, I'm doing this on my laptop with the BlueStacks here. I don't have the PC client on my on this computer, but definitely the older characters need some love. They definitely need some help. Like, I really liked how they did the Savage Omicron. That was really exciting, and I thought that was really good for the community. And I'm just looking through here to see if I can see, like, oh, bada bing, bada boom, that character would look good with an Omicron here. Nothing's screaming out at me here. Real good. I know Krennic has one, but that's not too great or whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of dead factions. Maybe I don't know if Jawas have an Omicron. I think they do. Do you think
Mhm.
they do? I don't. I can't recall.
I will check right. I believe they have a territory war one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Um,
I do not see it though. Maybe they. Yes, they do. Chief Nebbit has one
okay. Yeah. See,
territory.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
I have two loaded up. If you want to keep looking, while I have the two that I have in mind.
Yeah. Sure. What ideas do you have?
One that again I have to give credit to Arnold, Darth Maul,
Darth Maul.
an
Actually,
iconic character. It's Phantom Menace season. We're celebrating the anniversary. Don't give him a rework. Just give him an Omicron. Give him an Omicron. Throw us a bone. Celebrate Phantom Menace with us. Give the free-to-play players something that we all have and boost his viability. He's such an old character. He was meta back in the day,
oh
way
yeah.
back in the day.
Hmm.
But bring his viability up. I know there's a new Maul. He's great with Maul DeLoreans, but I would love for Darth Maul to get an Omicron. And then go back. This one's going to shock a lot of people, but go to your old Republic.
All right, I'm going to the Old Republic. Let's take a gander.
This is a hot take, but Revan. I would
Really?
love to see Revan get an Omicron. Bring back his viability where he can be a standalone team. I would love to see a Revan lead Omicron that would boost him to, okay, yeah, you can plug him in with JML, you can plug him in with Jedi Knight Cal and that, but I would love to see it where he can bring those old Republic characters that no one is using and boost their viability and bring that old Republic meta back in a way. You know, like Bastila. Who's using Bastila nowadays? Jolie has some uses, yeah, but as you see, Karth has no use. Juhani's good in territory wars. Zal, I don't even remember the last time Zalabar was relevant. Canderous is busy with Mandalorians, but other than that, I really love to see some Old Republic love. And Jedi Knight Revan is a perfect character to get into Omicron because a lot of people have him. A lot of people love the Old Republic. It would just be an amazing thing to see. Have you thought of one, Dark, that you would like to
Yeah,
see?
I do actually. Yeah. Now this one may be a little bit controversial because this team's already sort of good enough already. And we've talked about this before, Rebic, but I would like to see an Omicron on gas. And now it doesn't have to be this life-changing, oh, is a Galactic Legends, beats all Galactic Legends, all this or whatever. But the 501st, they were good back in the day when Gas first came out. Was basically the best team for quite a while before the introduction of the Wave 1 or Gen 1 Galactic Legends first being released. But after that, I mean, he really isn't able to beat certain Galactic Legends anymore. I mean, he was able to beat Ray at one point, and then rest in peace, Great Nerf of 2021 got absolutely hammered, and that made the Ray counter a lot more difficult. And now that Ray has all these other lifter characters, Cal Kestis's, Shorties, and then Datacrons on top of that, Gas really doesn't even stand a chance against much GLs anymore. I mean, he gets beaten by CLS if you put him on defense. So I would just like to see this team get a little bit more love, especially because of the high requirements and the difficulty I thought of the event in order to get this guy.
May have to bump that gas to relegate for Lord Vader.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
But you brought up a team that went over my mind. CLS, get him an Omicron.
Yeah,
CLS team has been okay in the past few years, but why not give CLS an Omicron? He is an interesting character. Different forms, call to action is so interesting. It is such an amazing idea.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I totally agree.
But CLS has fallen off at the top end of the meta. I want there to be an incentive to, all right, CLS, let's take him to Relicate. He's such an iconic character. He's an amazing legendary. His event's great.
Mm-hmm.
He's fallen off to the wayside, and Leia at times takes apart his team using Han and Chewie.
Yep.
So I would love for CLS to get an Omicron. I think that is a very solid team that is an Omicron away from being back to, okay, this team's dangerous. Watch out. CLS is on defense.
Yeah. And it used to be like that not too long ago, especially in 3v3 with the CLS 3PO and 3POC team. Now I know that was kind of a deadly team for quite a while, but that just seems to have fallen off the wayside a little bit, at least in my division of Grand Arena Kyber 2. I don't see that much on defense anymore. But yeah, I would agree with that. I'd like to see some changes maybe with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we are going to do next is review each other's rosters. And then we are going to introduce something called the Faction of the Month. It is something where we individually, as well as the rest of you can do along with us, is focus on a faction, whether it be gear, relics, mods, zetas, omicrons, where we really dial in on a faction and we get them to where we want them to be, where we can use them in Grand Arena, territory wars, territory battles, stuff that we have been sleeping on recently. So the first faction of the month for Dark, I'm actually going to go to his clones.
Yeah, oh boy.
Him and I have talked about this already, but his Bad Batch. His Bad Batch is very slept on, as you see. Bad Batch is a great team still, very plug and play, especially with Shaak Ti. There's a lot of stuff you can still do. I believe Bad Batch is the team that a lot of people don't give enough attention. And with gearing them up, you get an amazing fleet in addition with the Marauder, which he has at 7 stars already, which with that ship, you can get Negotiator to counter Executor. That's another Executor counter. That frees up another fleet. So his faction of the month is Bad Batch. And as for the rest of his roster, I don't have many complaints. He's a very efficient player. Dark is one of, if not the most efficient players. He does an amazing job allocating his gear, his relics, and he does great on mods. Amazing job on mods. So overall, I like his roster. There are a few things that I would like to change and want him to work on. We'll get that in later episodes, but overall, he has a solid roster and fits right in to Kyber 2.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the mod compliment. I don't think I'm too great with mods. I try my best. But yeah, let's take a look here now at Rebek's roster here. I'm gonna pull it up here in the ally list. Before we had talked, oh yay, Kyrotex. We had Rebek and I have talked about kind of what factions we were going to talk about, and previously, the faction that I wanted to talk about with him was his Night Sisters. And I was like, oh, the mods here are not that great. And little did I know, I checked his roster the next day, and then bam, his Night Sisters were like on par. We got the Zetas on there, all that stuff. And it was just like, oh, okay, I got to figure out something different here for this guy's roster. So as you can see here, 7 million GP. We've got 4 GLs. We got the Darth Bane. We got the Omicrons going on here. Very, very efficient roster here for on the GL side of things here. We are very big here. I guess we got the Star Killers here. So very, very good with the efficiency here. One thing I do say, and it's more minor more than anything, is just taking a look at our Jedi here. Cornerstone Jedi for Rebic here. We know that, or at least that's what he's told me, is that he's going to unlock Jedi Master Luke any day of the week now. He's down to his last, I think, 2 requirements. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's almost done with his JML farm. And just seeing this Jedi Knight Revan here at Gear 12, I'm like, man, this guy is he's super useful in a Jedi Master Luke team. And no Zetas on our Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker either. Even just without Jedi Master Luke, this guy can solo so many teams with the Zetas on here. It makes the team so much more incredible. Don't ask me what the Zetas do. I don't remember, but I know they're important. But if we're gonna get Jedi Master Luke, we're gonna need this Jedi Knight Revan here at least at Relic 3 to get the if you're gonna throw a Datacron on the team, that's gonna be super helpful. And also the Joe Lee. I know Joe Lee's fallen out of favor a little bit these days because JML can be beaten so many teams that have anti-revive. But Joe Lee with that revive with the Zeta, which you've already got on here, which is fantastic. The Zeta. That looks pretty bad. Maybe it's not the Zeta. I guess it's not the Zeta because I don't see it on here. Oh yeah, no, here's revive all Jedi Owls at 80% health. I think that is the Zeta. That's great. That's on there. But this guy's got to be at Relics because if this guy's not surviving the hits, then there's no point of even having him on the team. But other than that, I mean, this roster looks very solid. Even with the ships over here. I've got some complaints, but we'll hit on that a little bit later. But the ships here, we've got an executor, we've got our negotiators, we've got our malevolences, we've got a Thrawn fleet, we've got the bare bones here, we've got a 5-star comeuppance, which will be nice. And since you bought the light speed bundles, we like that stuff here. But all good stuff, a good foundation here. But 7 million GP. I mean, for being in Kyber 3 right now, I mean, you are definitely pushing way above, I think, what this roster or what normal people would use this roster at. I think you're taking great utilization of it and really pushing above and beyond where most people would probably fall with this kind of roster. So, good work.
Thank you. Yeah, I hate ship farms. That is a fact that you guys will get used to. It is something that I despise. I am begging CG to make them double drop permanently. It's sad that they haven't. I know there's not as many ships as characters, but come on. It takes like a year to farm one ship. And in order to get a capital ship to 7 stars, I think it takes about 14 months if you're doing it completely free to play.
Yep.
So just please give us a bone, make ships double drop. But I appreciate that. One thing that he did not embarrass me about is my mods. And I touched on that earlier. Something that I will definitely need to do before I get JML is touch on my mods in my roster, especially for my Jedi. And that is something that I'm going to be working on. I'll add that to my faction of the month with the Jedi, tuning those mods on Revan and Jolie and all of those characters to make sure that they are ready for that JML. It's just JML has fallen to the wayside because I got my Bane. I don't know if you showed that. I got my Bane up and running to Relic 8 already, and then I relicked up my Padme from Relic 3 to Relic 5 for that Datacron. So I've been pushing it off. I only have 2 requirements. I've had 2 requirements to get done for the past month and a half now, and everything's just been falling to the wayside because of all the stuff that's been happening. But I appreciate the compliments. But if I'm being honest, Dark has a much better efficient and allocated roster with his mods, his gear, all that. So I tip the hat to him. So
yeah, well, I appreciate that. And then circling back, I know y'all all saw that CLS with the missing mod. I was actually doing a big remod with Rebic literally right before our podcast. I was trying to make my first order officer a little bit faster. So I promise I don't have just missing mods on characters all the time. We were just doing a massive remod before that. So I'm sorry for that awful sight you had to see there. But anyway.
Trying to get canceled by the Swigo community. Podcast episode 1.
Yeah, I mean, holy cow! I was like, oh my gosh, I'm already. I mean, this guy's over here bloating my ego about mods, and here I got missing mods on CLS. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So the way we're going to end every single podcast is actually answer some Q&A questions that you guys submit to us, and you guys can feel free drop down any questions you have in the comments below, and we will read all of them. We may not be able to answer all of them all in the same episode, but we will make sure to get to your question eventually in an episode. We can guarantee that. And we already had some of you ask some questions, which we are going to actually answer today. So I'll let you take this first one, Dark.
Okay.
How has the game evolved from when you started to how it is now? Specifically, gear, teams, game modes, etc.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad, in my opinion. The game has gotten monumentally more expensive as the game has evolved. I remember back in the day, just it was really the marquee characters was the most expensive. But now here with like Galactic Legends and all that, adding tons of marquee characters and even now Omicrons and tons of gear and relics, this game has gotten absolutely just insanely expensive. So I'm not a huge fan of that. But one thing I do like, or actually a few things, is the gear economy changes. Back in the day when I was playing, it was only single gear drops for most of the nodes or whatever, and obviously relics weren't a thing back then, but it was so much more expensive, or it took us such a long time to gear up just any sort of character or whatever. But now with like accelerated gear, double drops on shards and all that has made getting older characters a lot easier now, and especially with the gear reworked on how like Mark 5 stun guns, Mark 3 stun cuffs are now put in the challenges. Or the gear challenges, that has made gearing up older characters a lot better. So I got to hand CG to that. That was huge for the player base. And so I'm definitely a big fan on that. And then another thing was characters are way more, or teams, I should say, are way more faction based now, which I'm a big fan of because that to me, it fits a little bit more into the lore. I'm a big lore nut, as Rebek probably knows. So I like the teams that are kind of cohesive and fit together in the same faction, just kind of fits all nice and pretty inside my head or whatever. But I do got to appreciate back in the good old days of 2016 Swigo, where you could do your Wigs or your Count Dooku metas or your Darth Maul metas or even your Captain Rex lead metas, if some of y'all remember that as well. I do appreciate that as well. It has that bit of nostalgia. Yep, Thrawn lead too. I don't know if he was ever meta, but yeah, Thrawn lead was interesting. But yeah, I mean, just with the way with like Galactic Legends and the characters, I gotta admit, as much as the relic grind sucks, getting some of these characters up to high relics and seeing them do some pretty crazy things, like Darth Bane being able to solo an entire team, like a Leia team, that's incredible. I mean, that's just absurd. It's kind of fun to see. And it's accessible for everybody, so that's just kind of fun. So I would say there's more positives to the game, how it's evolved, than the negatives. I mean, there are some pretty glaring negatives, but overall, the positives I think outshine the negatives. And I'm not going to just be the guy that rips on CG the entire time. I mean, I will when they deserve it, but they have made the game I think a little bit more enjoyable and fun, especially with like the power creep and stuff.
Okay, so you see, Dark is much more friendly with CG than I am. CG, I will start with the positives of what they have done from when I started playing to where they are now. CG has brought in many more characters that we thought they would never bring in. A perfect example is Starkiller. When Starkiller came out, I blitz farmed him. I believe I got him many months before Dark even did.
Yeah.
Because Starkiller, in my opinion, is just so cool. Like his story, his abilities, and all that, and it felt like it was Starkiller. So I will give him props like that. And we've been able to get him, Cal Kestis, Seer, these video game characters that aren't in live action or anything, but they are a part of the community and the Star Wars universe. And I will give them props for that. For giving us characters that we all love that may not be mainstream, but die-hard Star Wars fans know we're able to enjoy them because they brought them into the game. So I like that. And another thing I'll give them props to is the gear, like Dark touched on. They've made it easier. They did the first round, I guess that you can call the raid currency, the second round of gear alleviation. So I'll give them props on that. They did a great job with that and everything. And the last thing I'll say is they are putting more effort recently into their events. The Jar Jar event was awesome. The Cal event was quite interesting. And outside of the speeder bike raid, the Crate Dragon raid was actually quite interesting as well. So seeing those cinematic moments, bringing it to life in the game, I will say is amazing. Because back in the day, we didn't have all that. Characters were limited to like the main characters, the mainstream ones to get our attention and stuff like that. So seeing these smaller characters and characters not in the mainstream, I'll give major props to with CG. That's something that they've changed over time. As for what I do not like, for starters, instead of it feeling like a game where you're grinding for a character, it seems as if you're now just chasing a character before they lose viability. A perfect example is I'd like to bring up Dark when he when he unlocked gas. He got gas in, I believe, January of 2021. Is that right?
No, it was before even the GLs were released. So I think that's like what, 2018, I think, whenever gas was released.
Oh no, I was saying when you got him unlocked at 7 stars.
I know I unlocked him. It was right after the first wave of GLs was released. I unlocked him.
Yep. Yeah. And so he got him and he was so excited about it. And then all of a sudden, the great nerf of 2021 hits and, well, General Anakin Skywalker took a hit. And he's not the same character he used to be. And my issue is with all these characters coming out nowadays, it's going from, oh, this character is interesting and fun. You can use them in some way. They counter something that is usable. It now feels as if I'm chasing a character and I need to get this character before they lose viability. And that's a big thing with Datacrons, because when a new character comes out, a Datacron is going to follow them and it's going to put them at the top and push their boundaries of what they can do for that temporary amount of time. And a perfect example of that is Gungans, where they just got a Datacron. And after that Datacron expires, then you're not going to have that same feeling of meta. Like I was talking about earlier, you're not going to have that same Gungan team. So that's something that has changed drastically because of the frequency of characters being released and all that and everything, which it's a give and take. We want more characters, but we don't want them rushed out. Let us enjoy those characters. Let us enjoy them being powerful and everything. But I understand the Whales and the Krakens need their exclusiveness of their viability before free-to-play players can counter it and have access to them, which I understand.
Yeah.
Another thing that I do not appreciate is the feeling of it's not grindiness. It feels like a chore at times, where we are getting game modes where it's literally, all right, we're just going to go in, deploy, or go in full auto. I miss the times where when there was a game mode released, it was community-wide. Everyone was excited. Everyone was going in. We were joining in together. A perfect example of this is raids. When Han Solo was announced in the raid, the whole community was thrilled. CG even made a post about the first person to unlock Han Solo. And it's just that excitement that I miss, because they would never do that. Like remember when GAC, the system changed? After the first season, they didn't post about who finished top at #1 in Kyber 1. That would have been an exciting post. Congratulations to Pimpo for finishing #1 in Kyber 1 in the first season.
Yeah.
And it's just that excitement and that interaction. And that's where my last point is. And CG interacted so much more with the community back in the day. They did so much more engagement and stuff, which Meathead is in Discord. He does an amazing job, but I know his hands are tied a lot of the time. So something that I wish was a little different and more like the old days was where they interacted more with the community and gave feedback to the community and actually listened to us, opposed to just doing whatever they want and going for a cash grab, you know? So that's how it's changed in my opinion. And that's my opinion on CG as well. I guess you guys got that too.
Yep.
So the other question we have for this episode is, how do you depict what team is best for each game mode? EC, Grand Arena, Territory Wars, Conquest. And I'll start this one off. An obvious one would be Omicrons.
Yep.
Omicrons are always a clear indication. If a team has a character with a Grand Arena Omicron, probably gonna want to use them in Grand Arena, except if it's like Krennic or something but those are pretty obvious ones. But outside of Omicrons, it's if your character is fast and they can do quick damage, that's great for Grand Arena. It's great to blitz out those teams. It's quick, fast, gets damage out there, and high banners. And something else you want to look at is protection recovery, survivability, and stuff like that. So if they have high survivability or they're hard to kill off, that's a great Grand Arena defensive team. If they're a quick offensive team like Troopers, that's a great offensive team. So that's ways to look at it. Teams that can do a lot of debuffs, that's a great Conquest team. Like, I believe a perfect example of this is Radis with Cassian with his ability blocks. I believe Evasion down as well. That's a great Conquest team right there. And then for Territory Wars, that's interesting because the higher up your guild gets into the Territory War bracket, the more you're going to see teams blended. So, for instance, Inquisitors, Reva, Lead, that's what you do in Grand Arena, right? In Territory Wars, at the end game, you're going to see a lot of Lord Vader with Reva, Grand Inquisitor, Maul, and then Royal Guard. So you're going to be blending and making a lot of super teams. So that's where Territory Wars gets a little tricky. But overall, I think it's just based on what that character can do and how that team operates. What do you think, Dark?
Yeah, well, for starters, if you're really lost in the game, like if you just got level 85, you just started Grand Arena, obviously we're not going to be able to answer your questions on how to set up your Grand Arena defense. That's a way too big of a complicated question to ask in the remaining time that we have left here. What I will always recommend to anybody who's starting Grand Arena, just became level 85, has a few teams at their disposal, is use the website swigo.gg, not a sponsor, obviously, but they that website was probably the turning point for me from what really turned my roster into I really don't know what I'm doing to okay, now we're in the Kybers and all that stuff. That's if you're just starting level 85. It's gonna be a while before you get into that kind of division or whatever. Just even from a galactic power standpoint. But that will give you a good idea on basically on like what teams can counter what and how to mod those teams as well, because you can have the team, but if your mods are also not in tune,
good point. Yes.
The mods have got to be in tune. So swigo.gg, definitely check out that website. The Grand Arena counters, what can counter what, Datacrons or non-Datacrons, but then also make sure to look at those mods as well for the ideal mods for each character. That is a great basis for everybody. It's free to use for the public. I advocate it for everybody to use that because it really turned me.
And if I can jump in real quick, if you link your account to that, you can also see the feedback from your Grand Arena. So you can see what people are using against your teams, And then if you forget what you used against a certain team when you're on offense, you can see that. And in Grand Arena also there's data from all the other players, so you can learn the counters from that as well. But go ahead. Sorry for that. I just wanted to add that, George.
No, you're exactly right, and that's probably one of the most important things is link your Swago account to that website, and you can track the history there. Now, it only does Grand Arena, to my knowledge. I don't think they do the Territory Wars yet. I think that's still like in production or whatever, but I think Grand Arena, which is probably the most important game mode for any new player that's just hit level 85, that's probably your most important game mode. So definitely get on that swago.gg, check it out. And then if you have any more like specific questions or like, oh, how do I do the turn order for beating a X team or beating a X, Y, or Z team, then, leave a comment and, we can maybe leave a response back, or we can talk about it in a future podcast where we talk about, for a long topic about like, how do we counter Supreme Leader Kylo Ren on defense, or how do we counter Jabba the Hutt on defense, so we could do those specific questions if we see like a recurring theme there, or people are really struggling. Like I know probably a lot of you are probably wondering how to get consistent wins against Leia if you don't have Darth Bane. That's a big question. Obviously, Darth Bane has kind of changed that around or whatever, but more stuff like that. Grand Arena is probably the main focus for people who care about that stuff. Territory Wars probably not so much, at least in the early.
Especially with the crystal focus in Grand Arena, yes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I always recommend swago.gg. Always and always.
Yeah. And there's one last question that I actually just got in my Discord. So they asked if there is one thing that you could add or bring back to the game, what would it be and why? And we'll end the Q&A with that. I'll let you start, Dark.
I'll see. Now that's an interesting one. What would they add or bring back? I can tell you what they can get rid of, but add or bring back. Let's see. And this is more a joy about me, and it's I guess Omicrons have kind of replaced it or whatever, but I really liked when they had like Territory War specific characters, like bonuses. Like I remember at one time way long ago, they're like, this, like CG would say, this kind of Territory War this week, Mace Windu's got a specific buff, and he could beat the whole Nightmare team with Palpatine, Nihilus, what's his name, Darth Sion, and all that stuff. Basically would solo that team or whatever. So just basically like a free equivalent to Omicron. So I wish they'd kind of bring back that spontaneity back in the Territory Wars, and maybe they could revamp that in a way where like certain zones in each Territory War quadrant has like a specific bonus, and they can change it up every week or whatever, or every time there's a new Territory War. Just bringing that kind of that spontaneity back where you can't even really prepare for it, but they're like, hey, this kind of thing has a certain bonus only for this round of Territory Wars or whatever, just so it kind of changes it up and makes it more fun. Now I'm sure like the top end guilds would probably hate that because they want their unbroken win streak or whatever to be the best guild in the game. But in my opinion, the game's supposed to be fun. I think that would add a lot more fun and character, and probably a revamped life back to Territory Wars, which is kind of a dead game mode in my opinion right now. So at least that's what I would add back, or some sort of version of that. What about you, Rebic?
So there are two things that I would bring back. One is not as big as the other one, so I'll start with the smaller one. Lower requirement legendary events. The last low gear legendary event we had, Dark, was Beskar Mando.
It was Beskar Mando, huh?
Yeah, and before that it was Padme.
Yeah.
So I would love to see where, you require it at 7 stars. Get your money, get that exclusiveness. I understand. People get it right away, they can enjoy it. But let us determine how difficult the event should be. Let us be, wow, this guy can beat it at gear 10 because he did this, even though it recommends gear 12. Yeah. Like, give us a recommendation, but let us choose what we need to take our characters to, because it was exciting when you completed an event with the requirements at a lower gear level than recommended, because that was just grind, arduous trial and error. I miss those days, especially with the Thrawn event.
Yeah.
That was so much fun, which actually Dark helped me beat. So we're just gonna keep that on the down low. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want, and this is the big one, is raid exclusive characters. And I touched on that. Raid exclusive characters, do they not make money? I guess you can make that argument. But when you unlock as a guild a raid exclusive character, it's something you can celebrate as a whole. Like
Mhm.
when I found out General Kenobi was coming out, wow, he actually hasn't pulled up. Yeah, when General Kenobi was announced, I was ecstatic. I was to the moon. I'm like, I need this raid. I need to do this raid. I want to do all. I want those shards. And as a guild, we were so excited to get those shards and to unlock that character. It would bring excitement to a raid instead of just, oh, you're getting currency. So how about giving us a raid exclusive character? Make it so like, okay, you need to have these high relic characters. I'd be even okay with that. Make it so you have to have the high relic characters. And then after, let's say 6 months, or if you want to follow Proving Grounds, which we're not getting into that this episode. But if you want to do it after a year, right now they have the old raid characters for raid currency. You can get those old raid characters. So give us those raid characters. Give us that excitement of doing those events and joining and uniting as a guild to unlock something together. Like
Mhm.
that's why I missed. That's something that I would love to see be brought back to this game.
Yeah, I agree. That was kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is the conclusion of episode 1 of the podcast. As Dark mentioned, we are going to be reading all the comments below and everything. If you have any questions, anything else you want to see in the podcast, we will take all feedback and we'll answer any questions you have below. And yeah, we're very excited about this podcast. We want to include free to play players, beginner players, in the middle of the game players, and then those end game players as well. We just want to make a community for everyone. And I will be starting up a free to play account as well, and we can follow that along. So if you're just starting the game, I'm going to be going down the same path as you guys, and we can work together and just discuss in the comments and in the podcast of how the new game is going and what to do and how to get to points where you want to get to. Dark, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I know Rebek and I had talked about this in the future. We were thinking about maybe doing 1 or 2 roster reviews from you guys in the audience per podcast. So feel free if you want to leave your ally code down in the comments or whatever. Maybe one of the lucky few will get chosen to be showcased on the podcast or whatever, and free of charge. Obviously, just leave it down in the comments or whatever. So I think that would kind of bring some spice of life there and kind of show some more insight based into, well, if you're an early game prep player or a end of the road player as well.
I couldn't have put it any better. So that is the end of episode 1 of Troopers on Break. We got to head out. We appreciate all of you watching. Please leave a like, leave any comment you want down below. And until next time, it's great to be in the Empire.
Yep. See you.